Kane Cornes gets us underway on a Thursday. Hello to you, Kane.
Hello to you, Gerard. Yeah, I was an interested listener to that list. All makes sense to me. A bit more confused now after listening to it on what decision you would make. But for me, it's the Giants over North Melbourne. If I'm Alastair Clarkson, I just look at the list. I mean, the list at North Melbourne is a little bit dire from my perspective, as I've chatted about all year, and the prospect of being able to reset and go with some of the guns that you've got at the Giants, much more likely to push towards a premiership at the Giants in the next 3 to 4 years than I think you are at North Melbourne.
Do you think the bigger picture plays a role? Is that the Giants are they're a strange team on the landscape. They're a transplanted team. I wonder if one day they might actually be privately owned and sort of forge an identity like that. North Melbourne is always been a troubled club here, but has a romantic pull.
Yeah, I would say that if it was a big club like an Essendon or a Collingwood or a Richmond, and you were comparing them to Giants. But this is North Melbourne. I understand the romance behind it, Gerard, but they're a bit of them. Like there are issues everywhere at North Melbourne. I think the Giants have a bit more stability off the field. I think they've got a list management department for a start. Like Clarkson's walking into a place that doesn't have a list manager and a head recruiter. So I mean the headwinds at North Melbourne are significant. And just to start at the Giants, you've got arguably the game's best player. So I would have Toby Green, if not the best player in the game, certainly a top 3 player. So you walk in and you have the game's best player. That's a fair start. You've got pick 4 in the draft. You've got Whitfield and Kelly, who have been down on form, but you can easily rejuvenate them. You've got Cornelia, you've got Himmelberg, you've got Sam Taylor, who we probably don't watch close enough, but those that do watch him really closely are saying he's as good as any key defender in the game. So the list just excites me if I'm Clarkson, and the ability to reset, not dissimilar to what Collingwood have done. You may lose a couple again, but yeah, I just think the choice, if you're Alastair Clarkson, and it is only those two to choose from, and you're not certain that he may choose either, I think it's reasonably obvious.
We've got fans of Essendon, Richmond and Port Adelaide. What about our pros and cons?
You're not in the race, though.
Not yet at any rate. Yeah. Kane, just before we delve into the nitty-gritty, have you read the piece on your old teammate Jay Schultz?
I have, and it was confronting. I was... It was one of those ones where you log on to the Herald Sun and you're just taken aback a bit. It's the lead story on the Herald Sun. You're going, I had no idea. And then you click on and you read it, and it's hard to read. And, he was a much-loved teammate at Port Adelaide, and he was such an exciting high flyer. Like, he just played footy with no regard for his own safety. Now, I'm sure a lot of those head knocks, and I think there was up in the 40s in terms of head knocks and concussions throughout his career, were from trying to take a hanger and sit on people's heads. So the contrast of doing what the fans want you to do and what puts bums on seats, and the consequences of doing that, I mean, how significant is that when he's talking about the change in his personality at home and how that has affected his kids and his family life, and trying to explain that to the kids? It's just, it's really confronting, Gerard, and it does make you think a little bit, and a little bit, you look back and you think, were you lucky not to get that many? Did you have that many? How are you functioning and all that? So it just poses a lot of questions. But yeah, my thoughts are with Jay and Amy and his kids and what they're going through at the moment. Do
you think you will filter that into your thinking around head knocks, the adjudication of them, the suspensions, the rules? So that we are getting a series of case studies. I would argue that this is nearly the most confronting, when he speaks about the rage that he feels and the brain damage that has already been diagnosed, and not knowing what 10 to 20 years looks like, and the need for caution, but you can only take precautions. It's too late for him. This is about the next generation that comes through.
So what do you do? Yeah, I think about this all the time. So what do you do without stripping away what we love about the game? Now, as I said, and you'd have to speak to Jay and study the tape and look at Richmond and Port Adelaide and all the incidents. I'm sure a lot of them, my recollection, was from landing on his head, from trying to take hangs. So how do you take that out of the game? we've seen so many incidents this year. Not so many. We've seen 4 or 5 incidents this year of someone's knee going to the back of an opponent's head trying to take a specky. No one says anything about that. So at what level do you want to strip away what makes the game great? At what level do you put, the responsibility on players, knowing that when you sign up for this, there is the risk that that could happen? I feel like we've made it pretty safe, as safe as the game has ever been, and the penalties for incidents such as Stewart are sanctioned heavily, and rightly so, and I was fully in agreement with that. I would have taken it one further. I would have sent him off for that incident, as I said at the time. So, yeah, look, I'm fully conscious of it. I think some people think I'm a bit more lax on head knocks than others, perhaps, or a bit blasé. I'm not. I just think you can't remove the things that make the game great, otherwise we won't have a game. And how far do you go? So I just find the not hypocrisy, but the discussion around why bumps are no good versus why a knee to the head is okay, but bumps are no good, I find that a bit hypocritical. So at what level do we continue to strip things away from the game that make it great? But it's tough to talk about that when you read a story like Schultz's and you think, yeah, Joe, this is clearly not an issue that's going to go away.
The round in front of us, Kane, I do love the way you're thinking about Friday night. So if ever there was... So I think all purple eyes are going to be on Luke Jackson, including perhaps the man who stands across from him at various ruck contests, who's going, so am I chopped liver, am I? Sean Darcy versus Luke Jackson.
Well, where's Sean Darcy going to play next year? That's what I want to ask. So I get the feeling he's going to go after him. So if he, and we've seen him do it. I think Sean Darcy is one of the few that is capable of physically intimidating his opponents. We saw it with Pitnet earlier on in the year where he had only eyes for his opponent and not the ball. And in that moment, he wanted to hurt him, and he did legally hurt him. Knee on knee, bang, miss 12 weeks or whatever it was. I reckon he's going to have a nice welcome for Luke Jackson, because I wouldn't be that happy if I was Sean Darcy, knowing that they're going after Luke Jackson. Because let's get this straight. Luke Jackson's not a forward. So if any Fremantle fan thinks Luke Darcy is coming in to solve your forward issues and he's going to be the missing piece that they've been searching since Pavlich finished in 2016, they've tried a number of avenues, he's not. He's a 0.6 of a goal a game player. He's taken 0.7 of a mark inside 50. Cozzy Pickett takes more marks inside 50 than Luke Jackson. He's 171 centimetres. He doesn't show any forward craft. Now, that sounds like I'm diminishing his ability. I'm not. But he's a ruckman. He's a number one ruckman, and Sean Darcy is a number one ruckman. So this doesn't solve anything for Fremantle next year. I watched them last Friday night with you, Gerard. 51 entries for 7 goals. Taberner was targeted 11 times inside 50. He retained the ball once, and none of them resulted in a goal. The most damaging and dangerous forward looked like Nat Fyfe, but he's done a hammy. He's going to be 31 by the start of next season, and you can't rely on him to be your forward option. So what does the forward line look like at Fremantle next year? Well, Taberner will be there, but he's going to be 29 and he's immobile and probably doesn't have the attributes that some of the other forwards have in the game. Lobb's going, so he's gone. He's been your best forward this year and one of the better forwards in the competition. Well, it's Jai Miss. He's played 1 game. He's a highly talented pick. So they won't second guess their decision to recruit Luke Jackson, but it doesn't solve any problems for them. And I'd be upset if I was Sean Darcy, and I'd be looking out for my safety if I was Luke Jackson on Friday night.
All right, so what does that look like?
Well, I just think he goes after him with his knee. He's very crafty so there's mainly at the centre bounce, and I mean, Luke Jackson's got one of the better roles in football because he does come in after the other opposition ruckman is a bit tired, or he comes up against the second ruckman. So if they can orchestrate Darcy versus Jackson, which clubs are pretty clever at doing, I think they will do that. So it's basically just driving his knee at the centre bounce. It's, it's clearly going to have the weight advantage on him around the stoppages, so really throwing your weight around there. And then, I wonder whether the other teammates of Sean Darcy just wants to make their presence felt as well before they welcome him to the club next year.
So this sits into your
huge
don't
game.
Be so nice. Don't be so nice.
Well, the game's too nice. It's too nice. Can we move on to Essendon? I can't believe how they just let Daicos run around in the first minute of the game. You've got a statement to make as players run out to their positions, Gerard. It's just, this isn't going to be an easy game for you, Nick. You've come off 40-3, and we're going to make it a little bit more difficult. They just let him waltz out to his halfback position. Oh, who am I going to go on? Am I going to go and stand on merit? Am I going to take another? He just waltzed around and took the opponent. Then First 5 minutes, he's running around on his own. They've been accused of having not been physical enough this year, and for obvious reasons with the Dylan Shiel-Luke Parker incident, and I thought it was an opportunity to make a statement on the big stage and essentially let Collingwood start the way that they started, and it cost them the game. I'd just love to see teams be a bit more physical and make life more difficult for the opposition.
So to their credit, they did lock down Nick Daicos beyond that lack of physicality at the start, but he got away from them right at the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't have as influential a game as what he had, but it was more the sentiment behind it, I think, like just to not shake hands before the start of the game and say, I'll see you at the end. Just to test a player out that hasn't been tested yet. A youngster who, gets a lot of his possessions clearly uncontested, which has been his strength. So let's make it a bit more contested for him and make life a bit harder, considering it's Essendon as well, and they've been challenged in that space all year.
Daisy Pearce will be here after 10. She's given her heart over to Collingwood. She made that case last week, and then I can only imagine the raptures that were there on Sunday. You're going to play Grinch on the Magpies?
I'm not sold. Gerard. I don't... Look, I'm really impressed. I love watching them play. They're one of the teams that you want to go and watch, and I admire the way that they take the game on. But they have beaten the 15th ranked side, 12th, 18th, 16th and 14th in the last 5 weeks by a combined 33 points. So if you're a sceptic on Collingwood, which I am, I think you can mount a case. But if you're an optimist, you can also mount a case. I also think more in how play too loose, and I think in a final against the big forwards that you're going to come up against, and we know all of those names that are going to be there, in particular the two at Geelong, if you're going to give them that much space, so they play aggressive, they play off their man, they almost play the defensive position like they're the forward, so they just read it off the boot. They're not necessarily worried about putting any physical contact on their opposition. It has hurt them at times. Lynch got a hold of them against Richmond earlier on in the year, as did a couple of the Gold Coast forwards. We're going back away, but I think if you did look at the stats, and we highlighted this at the time when Lynch got a hold of more, they're a bit loose. I think the pressure of finals with the run and carry and handball receive off half back is susceptible to that real frontal pressure that the best sides will put on them. If they win a final, it's a massive tick this year, but I don't see them being there on the prelim final weekend.
Port Adelaide's game is in good shape. They have fully tested Melbourne and Geelong in the past 2 weeks by that curious expected score measure. They were expected to win both games. So this is a good test for Collingwood, I think.
It's a really good test, and it's just hard to be out for so long. You win 9 in a row. It's just not many teams go and win 10 in a row. So law of averages would say they're bound to drop one at this point. Haven't played each other this year, which has come around. That's just strange that you could get to round 20 and have played some teams twice and not other teams once. Doesn't make any sense. But MCG, big game. Port Adelaide will test them. It's whether they are still feel like they're in the fight. I heard you guys discussing this on AFL 360 last night. Once you realise you're not a final shot, then sometimes the real die-hard hunger can drop off like it was there against Geelong. So we'll wait and see. Anyway, I'm just a bit of a sceptic on the Pies, but I can understand why others are all in.
You've been studying the uncontracted list as if you were a manager in your own rights to see what undiscovered nuggets there are in there.
Some diamonds. So when I say this, so I had a look at the Herald Sun's list of all the uncontracted players. So I scoured through this and I thought, well, who are the players like a Jordan Clark, a Paddy McCartan, a Lipinski, a George Hewitt, a Tyson Stengel to a lesser extent that are unloved at the moment and playing a bit part role at one club but could come into another club and have an instant impact. And I'm thinking of clubs like Hawthorn. So, yep, they're absolutely going to go to the draft. They're going to get the elite talent. But you need some 24, 25, 26-year-olds to come in and support that you'll get for not a lot. I mean, James Aish has been a good player for Fremantle. You could have got him for nothing at all. Acres. So players like that. North, Adelaide, Hawthorn. So I got a few. My number one is Bailey Banfield from Fremantle. Every time I watch him play, I think there is something about him. So he's that medium-sized forward that has a few tricks. He's aggressive. He's 24 years of age. He's got 10 years left in him, 56 games. I'd love to get him for Adelaide. I think he fits in there. He'd be magnificent player for North Melbourne in terms of what would walk straight into their first 18 and be able to play a role and perhaps push into the midfield. Liam Stocker is a bit younger at Carlton and was a first-round draft pick. And I know there's a lot of Carlton fans that love him, but he's a bit unloved at the Blues. Like, where does he actually fit in? Every time I watch him, geez, he makes a couple of blues, but he's a good ball user. I think he defends pretty well, and he's got a bit of X factor, and he's 22. So there's one as well. Guelphy from the Bombers. I like. Now he's not none of these players are superstar players.
No, that's not how you're pitching it.
These are role players that can come in and be automatic inclusions to your best 18. So Guelphy's 24. He's played 80 games. He's got speed. I like the fact that he's prepared to get under the nose of the opposition. He can play half forward. He can play half back. He can go into the midfield. Gives you a bit of versatility. So I just think he's one. Yeah, go and give him a 3-year deal. Make him feel some love. Tell him where you're going to play him. Sell him a vision. And tell him he's going to be part of your club long term. Because I reckon he'd be feeling a bit out of favour at the Bombers and just not loved. Josh Battle at the Saints. Like, everyone needs an intercept defender. I can't believe St Kilda have let him come out of contract now. They may have tried, but if it's round 20 and he hasn't signed, he's 23, he's played 74 games, and he's one of the better intercept defenders in the game. So he would be absolutely worthy of someone going and giving him a 4-year contract at Hawthorn, North, Adelaide, these types of clubs, and making him feel a little bit of love. And then the other one is more of a veteran, but why aren't we talking about Jamie Elliott, Gerard? It's round 20, he's an unrestricted free agent. He's 29 years of age. He's got 214 career goals. He's had some injury worries, but you know you're going to get 16, 17 pretty high-quality games out of him per year, and you can get him for absolutely nothing. So for me, he's more of a going to a contender and a team that, you know, is more likely to play finals. But yeah, I'd be a bit nervous if I was Collingwood, the fact that he's unrestricted at round 20. He's just kicked the goal after the siren and he hasn't signed yet.
Kane's uncontracted hit lists, the undiscovered or the unloved gems: Bailey Banfield, Liam Stocker, Matt Guelphy, Josh Battle, Jamie Elliott. All right, it's all been building to this. The unveiling of the Gerard Polec Hall of Fame. Or do tell.
Well, you know I'm the number one ticket holder for my disgust at some of the long-term contracts that have been handed out across the journey. But I wanted to make this official.
Yep.
So we are announcing today the Gerard Polec long-term contract Hall of Fame. It's named after Gerard Polec. We've got a few inaugural inductees into the Hall of Fame this morning. And this isn't any way a criticism of the player. Because if I was the player, I'd get as long a term contract as I possibly could, and I'd do the same if I was their manager.
Yeah,
so
this is the deal.
This is the deal. This is the club. This is the stupidity that clubs continue to make these mistakes year after year. So it's a bit of a light-hearted look at mistakes that have been made and continue to be made. And it's a little bit on the back of Brodie Grundy. Like to think that he is already possibly up for trade 2 years into that 7-year deal just blows me away, particularly with the mistakes that Collingwood have made. So he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's a watch.
How many inaugural members?
We have got 1, 2, 3. We've got 6.
Oh, 6. Yes,
6.
It's a proper induction to start with.
And then we've got a few on the watch list. So I'm watching Lockie Whitfield. I'm watching Josh Kelly. I'm watching Zach Williams from the Blues, and I'm watching Brodie Grundy before I'm ready to induct them. Dan Hanbury, 2018, 4-year deal with a trigger for a 5th Gerard worth $800,000 per season. He's our first inductee. He's played just 15 games for the Saints, including just 2 in the last 2 seasons. He's our initial first inductee into this Hall of Fame. Gerard Polec speaks for itself. 5-year deal, $4 million. He was delisted after 3 years. He was delisted 3 years into that massive contract. Redrafted, he's played 20 games in the last 3 years, and believe it or not, he's still got 1 year left on that contract. This is controversial, I reckon, the next one, so hear me out. Rory Sloane is also been inducted into this list. At age 28, he was given a 5-year deal to stay at Adelaide and would have made him Adelaide's highest paid player. I'm pretty confident in that, so massive money. He's missed 37 games in the 4 years since he signed that contract. Adelaide have gone 11th last, 15th and 16th, and he's going to be 33 by round 1 next year, coming off the back of an ACL injury with 1 year to go on that massive 5-year deal. So great bloke, strong leader, but a disastrous 5-year deal for the Crows. Rory Atkins has been inducted. He's played, well, they signed him on a 4-year deal, Gold Coast, after he played 4 games only for Adelaide in 2020. He's played just 15 games since. Most of those have been as a sub, and he's still got 2 years left on that deal. So Rory Atkins, believe it or not, was given a 4-year deal at Gold Coast. He's in. Wayne Miller is in from the Crows, 5-year deal in 2020, Gerard. He's only played 11 games in 3 seasons since signing that deal, and he's still got a couple of years left on that. And Jeremy McGovern. Good player, Jeremy McGovern, with a good record, but 5 years at $5 million in 2018. $5 million for Jeremy McGovern. He's missed 20 games in the last 3 seasons, and the salary cap issues at West Coast, despite them being last or second last, are there for us all to see. So there's the initial inductees into the Gerard Polec Long-Term Contract Hall of Fame.
That's outstanding, Kane. There's a couple of Dan Hanbury will achieve legend status, I imagine,
I think
if he
will.
doesn't get back and ends up retiring. Sloan and McGovern are longer conversations, I think, as fabric men for their clubs. But that's good, strong stuff. I like your watch list, Kane.
Good on you, Gerard.
You're not the
Content king.
not the content king without good reason.